הרי אני מקשר עצמי לכל הצדיקים האמיתיים שדרנו לכל הצדיקים האמיתיים שוכני עפר קדושים בשם הארץ הם מבחן לרבנו הקדוש צדיק יסוד עולם נחן נובע מכוח חוכמה רבנו נחמן מפגים את שמחה נחמן מאומן זכותו תגן עלינו ועל כל ישראל אמן. So Rabeinu says like this, as we were just talking about the recap on lesson 10, but Rabbi Israel would always say like this, that you can be a Talmid Chacham. I was reading this conversation with Rabbi Israel in Ibei Anachar, in his letters to Rabbi Zalman Shazar, Rabbi Shalom. He was saying like this, Rabbi Israel he wrote a letter, he said, you can be a Talmid Chacham, but if you're not attached to the tzaddik and you're cholek on the tzaddik, you are like an amaretz. You're like an ignoramus. Meaning you could be a Talmid Chacham, you can know Gemara, Shas, you can know Torah Shebal Peh, because obviously Talmid Chacham, Rabeinu teaches us, as we know in lesson 12, that the inyan of being a Talmid Chacham is what? A person who has Torah Shebal Peh, wisdom. Wisdom in Halacha, and in Poskim, in Halacha, and in Gemara, Shas. Rabbi Israel used to say like this though. He said, who's a true Talmid Chacham? A Talmid, the student of the Chacham. Who's the Chacham? The Chacham Ahmed, the true Chacham, which is who? The Tzaddik Ahmed. Meaning, who's a true Talmid Chacham? The person who is a student of the true Tzaddik. He's a true Talmid Chacham. And a Talmid Chacham, a person who has tremendous wisdom in Torah, he can have tremendous wisdom in Torah, but he's not attached to the true Tzaddik. He didn't believe in the true Tzaddik. He's like an Amaretz. Because what are you missing? You're missing the Bechina of the true Chokhmah. That's what Rabbi Israel used to say. And there are many stories about this, how he used to explain this to people and how he used to converse with people, to explain to people that the Ikar today is no longer just the Chokhmah. It's no longer the Chokhmah anymore. It's whether you're attached to Chacham Emet. That's the greatest Chokhmah of all. Like what Rabeinu teaches us, Rabeinu redefines wisdom at an entire whole, which no tzaddik has taught us before. HaChokhmah shebechol HaChokhmot להשליך כל החוכמות. אפילו חוכמות גמורות. Rabeinu says the wisdom of all wisdoms is to throw away all the wisdoms. And what? To be tam v'yashar, to be upright, to be tam, to be simple, straightforward, and to be samera, to be removed from evil. As Rabeinu teaches us in Torah Ayeh. Those three categories, tam, yashar, samera, to remove yourself from evil. That's the ikar. The greatest wisdom of all is to remember that you know nothing. And that what? Like Rabeinu teaches us in lesson 123, without the chokhmah of the true tzaddik, I'm a no one. Meaning, whatever the true tzaddik tells me, I do. Bipshitut. Whatever the true tzaddik tells me, right is left, left is right, I believe him. And without what he tells me, I don't know. Rabeinu has all the wisdom in the world. Like Rabeinu says in Moharan, I've set up the entire table. I set up for the Mashiach all the wisdom like a Shulchan Aruch, like a set table. Meaning the Mashiach will have everything he needs. All the etzot, all the advice, everything that he needs to become who he is and to help the entire world. Because everything has been laid out. Like a Shulchan Aruch, like a set table. Meaning there is not a single question that Rabeinu does not have the answer to. The issue is our sechel is so putrid, our intellect is so messed up that we do not have the ability to have the bina, the deduction to understand what Rabeinu is telling us. Nor do we have the chokhmah, nor do we have the bina or the dat. The ikar though is to believe that the tzaddik has the remedy. Because when you believe that the tzaddik has the remedy and you're far from the remedy, that's the entire tikkun. Like what Rabbi Natan explains. Déjà fini mincha? Wow, okay. Like Rabbi Natan explains in an explanation on the 7 beggars, the Shiva Betlech, les 7 mendiants, the 7 beggars. In the 13th tale Rabeinu told, the 7 beggars, Rabbi Natan explains like this, that each beggar had a deficiency in a sort of category, right? The beggar represents a tzaddik. The tzaddik sometimes is missing and is deficient in a certain place. Meaning what? Sometimes he has a messed up back, sometimes he can't speak, sometimes he's blind, whatever it is. All these different deficiencies. No arms, no legs, whatever it is. But what? People recognized when they... What did Rabbi Natan say? The wedding couple who just got married, who were doing a Sheva Brachot, they invited a new beggar to each of the Sheva Brachot. In the story, the 7 beggars. And they recognized how much they missed the beggar. How much they missed and how much they were lacking the potential of this beggar or the kedusha of this beggar. So the first day, the blind beggar, right? Because they had 7 beggars come and help them along the way of their journey before they got married. And they wanted each beggar to come celebrate with them for each day of the Sheva Brachot. So they longed for the blind beggar, the beggar qui est aveugle. He didn't have eyes, he couldn't see. And they longed for this man, they want him very much, and he comes. And he gives them the gift that they shall be just like him. Meaning what? That they can see perfectly. Because we think that tzaddik is blind. Why? Because he wants to guard his eyes from evil, he wants to do this, big dusha. You know what I mean? He's completely kadosh. But the problem is, we're blind, because we see everything. And when we want to see everything, even that which is tameh, we begin to really damage our eyes from what's true sight, which is what? Olam haba. That's the true vision. So all these ideas are how a person, we think on the outside, when we see a person who's deficient, who doesn't have arms, who doesn't have a leg, whatever it is, a person who's a tzaddik, right, who's completely kadosh, who might not eat as much as someone else might, you know what I mean, or whatever it is that's different, we think that they are deficient, that they are lacking, when in truth it's us who is lacking and they are not. Which is how Rabeinu ties the entire story in the first line. Asaper lachem ech hayu smechim. I will tell you how people once rejoiced. And there's another version of how Rabeinu starts the story, the 7 beggars. Asaper lachem ech hayu smechim mitoch ha'mara shchora. I will tell you how people once were happy from within the depression. Meaning what? You think it's depressive to not have arms, to not have legs, to not be this, to not do that, to be deficient. Rabeinu is saying, no. The truth is, they don't need anything. And because they lack nothing, that's true simcha. What we call histapkut bamuat, being happy with the little bit you have. Or what is famously known in Pirkei Avot, ezu ashir hasameach bechelko. Who's rich? One who is happy with what he has. So what's the idea? I will tell you how people want to rejoice from within Mara Shchora. So, ça va Isaac? Bien, Baruch Hashem. So, Rabeinu is teaching us this inyan. I will tell you how people were once happy from within the depression. Meaning what? We think on the outside people are lacking something. When be'emet, the problem is we're lacking because we want everything. And when you want everything, you're not happy with a little bit. So Rabeinu teaches us this inyan. Be besimcha with a little bit that you do. That means begashmiut, in physicality, meaning parnasa, health, this, that, whatever it is. And ruchaniut, that's a chidush. And in Kedusha. Meaning, if you can't grab on to an hour of Torah, you can only grab on to 10 minutes a day. Be besimcha within the 10 minutes. Don't be depressed over the fact that you didn't do the hour. No, there's a big time, you know what I mean, to do, what do you call it? There's a time to do lev nishbar, to have a broken heart. To go to do it, to ask Hashem Yitbarach to help you fix. To see that what you're lacking and to beg Hashem to fill the lack. Because you recognize that you could be much better. But, Rabeinu says, the rest, you have to be besimcha. Tamid. And that means to be besameach with your chedek, with whatever Hashem has given you. That means bikdusha, in ruchaniut, to be happy with a little bit that you do. I just pray mincha, be besimcha with the mincha. Be besimcha when you pray, to be present whenever you pray. Because that's what the way that the tzaddikim act. They don't look from one thing to the next. They are in the present moment and that's all they look at. And that's the inyan of the 7 beggars, a little piece of the 7 beggars that's connected to what we were talking about. But specifically how these beggars are all deficient in a category and how the newlywed couple is longing for the beggar because they recognize they want the beggar. Rabbi Natan says like this, the ikar of the tikkun of the Geulah, the way the Geulah will come, is when people recognize how far they are from the beggar, from the true beggar. Meaning when you recognize that you are far from the inyan of the beggar, meaning when you humble yourself and you recognize that the tzaddik, the true tzaddik, is here and I want to be there too, but I recognize I'm not there, meaning when you lower yourself, that's how you draw the light of the beggar onto yourself. Meaning what? The fact that they longed for the beggar because they recognized how far they were from him, for the blind beggar, for the hunchback beggar, for the beggar who has a crooked neck, for every type of beggar, they brought the beggar to the wedding, and not only that, they received the gift of the beggar. Meaning the true tzaddik can grant the lowest person all the kedusha that he got. He can give it to you by the fact that you recognize you are so far from him. And that's the exact opposite of what we were talking about in this Torah. Torah Yud. Why? Because we were saying what? That there are Baalei Gava, there are people of arrogance who say, don't go travel to the tzaddikim. What do you need the tzaddikim for? You can pray. There's a Talmid Chacham perhaps in yeshiva with a beard and beirot, and he'll look at you and he'll tell a Bachur in yeshiva who wants to go to Uman for Rosh Hashanah, or who wants to go pray at the Kever Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and they're going to tell him what? Why do you need to go there? You can stay here and pray. You can study Torah, it's just as important. These are what Rabeinu calls Baalei Gava. People of arrogance, who think they have the ability to pray, and who prevent others from going to the true tzaddikim to really pray. As it says in the Gemara Brachot, Mi sheyesh chole bebeto, holech letamid chacham, yivakesh alav harachamim. Whoever has a sick person in his household shall go to the Talmid Chacham, the tzaddik, and ask about him for compassion, for mercy, because he knows how to pray. So Rabeinu says, who are these Baalei Gava? These people who do not recognize their own place. They think they're at the Madrega of tzaddikim. But the problem is, they're preventing Ta'ava of Hashem from being filled. They're preventing Hashem's desire from being filled. Why? Because we say Hashem mitaveli tfilatam shel tzaddikim. We were talking about earlier. Hashem desires the tfilot of tzaddikim, and because Hashem desires the tfilot of tzaddikim, all He wants to hear are the tzaddikim pray. As it says, tzaddik moshel beyirat Elokim. The tzaddik rules with the fear of heaven. Maze yira, fear, tfilah, because they are both drawn from the female principle, the woman, la femme, la malchut, la royauté. That's Sarah in them. So the entire story that we brought about earlier, with Sarah being captured in the palace of Avimelech, and Avimelech taking Sarah, and Hashem coming to Avimelech, the king of Egypt, in a dream and telling him, return the wife of this man back to the prophet. Return the wife back to this man, for he is a Navi. What's the entire story? Rabeinu is saying the entire allusion of the story is coming to teach us that there are people, Avimelech, I want to rule, meaning I want to have malchut, I want to have Sarah, I want to have tefillah. They think they know how to pray, and they are telling Hashem Yitbarach, I know how to pray. And what's Hashem saying? No. Bring tefillah back to the tzaddik. Adonai sefata tiftach. So I do that? Hashem sefata tiftach. Hashem open up my lips. Why? Hashem sefata tiftach. Take the first letters. Hashem Aleph. So Aleph, Dalet, Nun, and Yud. You have the Aleph. Sefatai. Sefatai Shin, and then Tiftach Tav. Rashi Tevot Eshet. Hashem return. Hashem Rashi Tevot Har Sadeh Bait. The three elements of Tefillah we talked about. Har being the lowest one, the Sadeh being the middle one, and the Bait being the most important element of Tefillah. For the Bait makes it accessible to everyone. You can walk into your house right now and grab a cup of water. You can't go to the top of the mountain. Tough. So what's the idea of the Bait? It's Yaacov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu brings tefillah to the lowest place so that every Jew can pray. He can do it bodedut. Like what Rabeinu told Rabbi Natan. What did Rabeinu tell Rabbi Natan when Rabbi Natan came to him with all his problems? Rabeinu looked at him and said, why don't you speak to Hashem Yitbarach like the way you're speaking to your best friend? And from that point on, Rabbi Natan would not do anything without tefillah. Anything. To the point where a sick woman once came to him, and begged Rabbi Natan, forced Rabbi Natan to what do you call it? To give a bracha for healing. And Rabbi Natan, because he gave a bracha for healing, after he walked out from the meeting, he said, now I'm forced to pray. Ça veut dire quoi? Rabbi Natan, il pouvait dire, Rabbi Natan could have said, after the bracha, that's it. I gave the bracha, walk out the room, the bracha is going to be answered. No. Nothing like that you will ever see with the students of Rabbi Nachman. Why? Because even though with their bracha they could have given what they wanted to give, they could have accomplished the bracha just by their dibur. No, everything has to come through tefillah. Mm-hmm. And this is what Rabbi Israel said about Sefer Hamidot. All the segulot brought in Sefer Hamidot, Rabbi Nachman's book of aphorisms, for example, all the alphabetical letters start with Emet and Emunah and all the things, and all the segulot Rabbi Nachman brings on every subject. On eating, on zivug, on finding, on parnasa, on everything, health. All the segulot Rabbi Nachman brings down there, Rabbi Israel used to say, he said, today, none of this works without tefillah. You have to pray. When Rabeinu says in Sefer Hamidot, for example, that a person who wants to attain emunat chachamim, faith in the chachamim, should look up at a clear sky. When the sky is clear without any clouds, when it's completely blue, look up to the sky and you'll have emunat chachamim. Rabbi Yisrael used to say, that does not work until you ask Hashem. Hashem, now that I'm looking at the sky, can you grant me emunat chachamim like the way Rabeinu says in Sefer Amidot? Because everything has to come through tefillah. So when Rabbi Natan walked out of the meeting, he said, this will not work until I pray now, meaning now I'm forced to pray. Anything Rabbi Natan used to do, he used to pray before. And Rabbi Natan used to say about himself, he said, I merited the level that I got to simply because I would not do anything, I would not move a hand until I prayed. Rabbi Natan would not drink water until he prayed. Can you imagine the madriga we're talking about? There are tzaddikim you can go to today, they grant a bracha, it gets answered. Peut-être c'est emet, maybe it's emet. Not the emet of Rabeinu. Rabeinu doesn't want people like that. Rabeinu wants people like what? I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to have you in mind in my tefillah. Maybe I will give you bracha, it doesn't matter. I'm going to pray on the bracha. Everything comes through tefillah. I'm going to go to the tzaddik, I'm going to say, Arani mekasher atzmi before I pray, and I'm going to ask Hashem. In Idbodadut, I'm going to pray for you. That's the ikar of what a person who understands that he doesn't have much koach, he can rely on the tzaddikim. This is what we're talking about. The opposite of the bar gava. The opposite of the bar gava is the person who constantly wants to pray, and obviously in the merit of the tzaddikim, do Arani mekasher, or go to the kerer of tzaddikim to ask the tzaddikim on their behalf. That's the ikar. That's a person who has anaba, true humility, to attain what Rabeinu was talking about, which is Hashem's Sfatat Yiftach. Meaning, when will you truly attain tefillah? When you return tefillah back to the tzaddikim. And when you recognize that tzaddikim possess tefillah, then your tefillah will begin to work. Meaning what? Hashem Sfatat Yiftach, ufi agid tfilatecha. Hashem Adnut, Sfatat Yiftach, Adnut Sfatat Yiftach, Rashet Tevot Eshet. Return the wife, which is Hashem Sfatat Yiftach, the lips of tefillah. Return Sarai Menu, which is tefillah, back to the man. Who's the man? Abraham Avinu, Ki Navihu, because he's a prophet. Meaning what? What's a Navi, a prophet? When Hashem sends the words of tefillah to the mouth of the Navi. Niv Sfatayim, an expression of the lips. Navi comes from the word Niv, to have an expression on your tongue. Meaning that the tefillot of the tzaddikim are constantly being used by the words of Hashem. Meaning Hashem sends the words to the tzaddikim are praying with the words of Hashem Yitbarach. Hashem himself is using the tzaddikim. Hashem is like almost praying to himself. He's just using the tzaddikim to bring back the tefillah. Hashem eshet ha'ish ki navihu. Return the wife of this man, return tefillah back to the tzaddik, for he is the prophet, for he knows how to pray. And when you do that, then you can begin to start doing tefillah. When you recognize that you yourself, who am I to really be at the madriga, to have my tefillot answered? After all my averot, all my this, all my that. When you recognize that, then your tefillot will begin to have koach. There's a reason why Likutei Tefillot has so much koach. Look through Likutei Tefillot, Rabbi Natan's tefillot on Likutei Moharan. Look at his tefillot. Everything he always writes is always with the biggest humility in the world. Always saying, Ribono shel olam, oi, 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 oya nafshi, woe unto my soul. Always speaking in a very lowly tone. B'zchut kol hatzadikim amitim. Always saying b'zchut kol hatzadikim. B'zchut kol hachachamim. With all b'zchut of all the chachamim. Rabbi Natan's always looking at himself in a dejected manner, because he recognizes that he himself is not sufficient in tefillah, but Rabbi Natan is the tefillah. Why? Because he recognized how far he was from it. When you recognize how far you are from the beggar, you draw the light of the beggar itself. You draw the light of the tzaddik. When you recognize how far you are from tefillah, that's when the tefillah begins to shine on you. Meaning, anava. Make yourself nothing. When you make yourself nothing, attach your tefillot to the tzaddikim, then the tefillot will begin to have tremendous koach to affect the Yeshua, the salvation that you need. And that's where we start. That's where we left off. We start a new section right now. V'zeh perush. This is an explanation. Want to read? Go. Come here. V'zeh perush. Right here.
וזה פירוש, ויאמר להם יעקב אביהם, אותי שיקלתם יוסף איננו וכו'. זה רמז על תוכחת השכל כי השכל מוכיח את הבעלי גאווה. רוצים להתגדל כי יעקב הוא בחינת השכל, כמו שתרגם אונקלוס, ויעקבני וחכמני.
Okay, so what does Rabeinu say? This is an explanation of the pasuk now. Now Rabeinu is going to bring the story when the brothers come back. When the brothers come back to what do you call it? When the brothers go down to Egypt to go get grain and everything, they come back to Yaacov with bundles, right? The bundles that Yosef, who hadn't revealed himself to them yet, gave them with bundles of money, etc. They hadn't opened up the bundles yet until they got back home and they showed Yaakov. What happened? They get back home and they come before Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu hadn't sent Binyamin yet. This is before the incident where they go back down and they bring Binyamin, the entire story. What happens? Vayomer lahem Yaakov avihem oti shikaltem. Yosef enenu. What does it say? Yosef enenu v'chule. Yaakov Avinu tells them, and Yaakov, their father, told them, Oti shikatem, you made me childless. Yosef enenu, Yosef is no longer here. What did he say after? Shimon enenu, Shimon is no longer here. Why? Because Shimon went down and Yosef knew the power of Shimon and Levi together, so he separated Shimon and put him in prison. Ve'et Binyamin tikachu, and they've taken Binyamin. Alai hayu kulana. This is all happening to me. Meaning what? The inyan of Binyamin, that we're actually, it's this exact inyan of Binyamin we're going to see right now. That Binyamin, Binyamin takachu, they've taken Binyamin too. Okay, so what's this idea? Ze remez atochachat hasechel. Who's Yaakov? Yaakov Avinu, he's the intellect. He's coming to the Balei Gava, who Rabeinu is going to explain are the brothers in this case. The Balei Gava are their brothers, and they're coming to Yaakov, and Yaakov is a chokhmah, Yaakov is a sechel. Why is Yaakov a sechel? Ki sechel mochiach et Balei Gava. Havatim nitgadel. The Balei Gava, the people who are arrogant, constantly want to improve their position. They constantly want to grow their pride. What happens? The sechel, the intellect, sees this, and he says, relax 1 second, and he says, stop pushing the boundaries. The Baal Gava is the person, like the brother, and Rabeinu was explaining that sechel is Yaakov. Why is the sechel Yaakov? Because it says, Ve'ya'agveni, when Esav HaRasha describes Yaakov to Yitzchak, after Yaakov had just stolen the bracha. Once Yaakov steals the bracha, Esav comes before Yitzchak and asks Yitzchak, give me bracha. And Yitzchak says, I just gave a bracha. So what does Esav respond? Vaya'agveni ze pa'amam. He tricked me twice. Tricked me twice, the first time being by stealing the bechorah, by stealing the firstborn. And second time, now with the bracha. Vaya'agveni, he tricked me. Esav was playing on the words Yaakov, meaning that Yaakov's nature is Ya'agveni, he's a trickster. Okay? What did Unkelu say? Translates it in Aramaic, Vayagveni, Vechakmani. He had chokhmah. Meaning what? Vechakmani, he outsmarted me, he outwitted me with his chokhmah. So what's the idea? Yaakov represents chokhmah, as we just proved. Vayagveni, which comes from the word Yaakov, Vechakmani, is chokhmah. So Yaakov is the sechel, he's the chokhmah. And the chokhmah is constantly rebuking a person who has pride, telling him, relax. Who do you think you are to have pride? You don't realize you're full of averot? You don't realize you're full of ta'avot, you're full of desires? Who are you to take kavod? So that's Yaakov. Yaakov is coming to tell the brothers this. And that's the intellect in a person. And what's the proof? Because kavod, the desire to rule, comes from a place of shtut, foolishness. As Rabeinu teaches us, mi shorotze kavod hu shote. One who wants kavod is a fool. Why? Because kavod comes from a place of malchut. It's not bechin of sechel. Which is why Rabeinu says it's very important to give kavod to a woman. Because a woman's job is not to gain her chokhmah. The woman's job is to feed her emotionally. The emotional feeding comes from the kavod. That's where her root is. Kavod malchut echayomer. The malchut, which is the woman, is kavod. That's why it's a job to give her kavod. But us men, we do not have the obligation to seek after kavod. In fact, because kavod comes from a place of a lack of chokhmah. So what? Yaakov comes And he tells them, and why Yaacov is Avihem, the Yaacov Avihem. Avihem comes from the word Av, father. Avihem is Ab B'chokhmah, father in wisdom. Anytime we see the Bechina of Av, father, it represents Chokhmah, wisdom. Brought down in Tikkunei Zohar and the Zohar Kadosh. Okay? Okay, so Yosef continue reading. Dainu. Little bit. No, you're good.
והיינו שהשכל מוכיחם ואמר להם אותי שכלתם כי כל המתגאה חוכמתו מסתלקת ממנו.
So what did he say? The Yaakov Avinu is coming with his intellect and rebuking the children and telling them, Oti shikaltem, you have made me childless. Ma de shikaltem, childless, comes from the word sechel. Meaning what? Ki kol ha-mitgaeh chokhmato mistaleket mimenu. You made me childless. What does it mean to make you childless? Oti shikaltem, you've taken away the chokhmah, you've taken away the sechel. What does that mean? Yaakov Avinu is saying, anyone who gets pride falls into what? His chokhmah is removed away from him. What does it say in the Gemara? Anyone who receives gava, his chokhmah is taken away. Because you cannot have gava and chokhmah in the same place. Anava and chokhmah are two of the same root. Gava and chokhmah are two opposites. You cannot have chokhmah and gava. True chokhmah we're talking about here. Because you see people who have chokhmah who can quote you Gemara, but they have full gava. That's not chokhmah. We're talking about real chokhmah here. So what's Yaakov Avinu saying? Oti shikatem, you made me childless, meaning what? You made me the sechel childless, meaning I no longer have any children. Because the sechel has been separated from the child now. Why? Because the children are balei gava. You have made me childless, meaning the sechel, you guys no longer have any sechel. That's what Yaakov Avinu is rebuking his children by saying. So imagine what we're talking about here. If the brothers fall under the category of balei gava, even if we can say such a thing, chad v'shalom, if they fall under the category of these people who fall into arrogance, imagine what we're talking about now. Yosef continues.
יוסף איננו זה בכלל תיקון המעוות, היינו עדיין לא תיקנתם המעוות שהוא לחרפה ולקלון, ויש לכם להתבייש מחמתו, כי תיקון המעוות הוא בכנת יוסף על שם אסף אלוקים את חרפתי.
Okay. So what does Yaakov say? Yosef is no longer here, right? Shimon is no longer here. They've taken Binyamin, and what? Upon me happens everything. What's the idea of Yosef is no longer here? Rabeinu is explaining the concept of Yosef now. Yosef was named Yosef because Asaf Elokim et Cherpati. Hashem gathered in my shame. Okay? Understanding that now, Rabeinu says like this. What is Yosef? To repair that which was done wrong. When something is crooked, you need to make it straight again. Yosef is the idea of making straight that which was crooked. Why? Because Rabeinu is explaining. Meaning to repair that which was once shameful. To repair that which was once crooked. Something which is shameful, something which is crooked needs to be made straight again. What is that, Yosef? What's the proof? Asaf Elokim et Cherpati. He gathered in my shame. Meaning what? He took all the places of shame and he no longer made me insecure in that place. Asaf Elokim et Cherpati, Hashem gathered in my shame. Meaning what? No longer shameful. That's Yosef. That's why Rachel says, Asaf Elokim et Cherpati, Hashem gathered in my shame. Meaning what? I'm no longer shameful that I don't have any children. So Yosef is the idea of repairing shame, which is what? Something that is crooked. Something that is broken. Okay? Meaning, what's Yaakov Avinu saying? Yosef and the concept of Yosef, which is making straight something crooked, is not here. Because you guys haven't repaired your gava. So you don't have the concept of Yosef, which is to make straight. Because you guys are full of gava, you guys are crooked. Continue, next inyan.
ושמעון איננו היינו על ידי שאין לך בחינת יוסף. אין לך בחינות שמעון, ושמעון הוא בחינת כי שמע השם, כי שנואה אנוכי. כי אתה אינך שנוא, כי מחמת שלא תיקנת את עצמך, בוודאי אינך יכול להוכיח אחרים, כי יאמרו לך.
Continue.
כשוט עצמך תחילה וכולי, על כן אינך שנוא, כי המוכיח הוא שנוא, כמו שאמרו חכמינו זיכרונם לברכה, היי צורבה מרבנן דמרחמי לבני מתה. לאו משום דמעלה תפה, אלא משום דלה מוכח להו בדברי דשמיא.
נמצא.
נמצא שהמוכיח הוא שנוא.
Chazak. Shimon and Elon. So not only do you not have Yosef, because Yosef is the idea of repairing something crooked, which you guys did not do, because you guys still have Gava, but you guys also don't have Shimon. Maze Shimon? Shimon represents the concept of what? Ki shama Hashem ki senua anochi. How does Leah name Shimon Shimon? Leah named Shimon Shimon because what? Leah, when she was married to Yaacov, she felt hated out of Rachel. Between her and Rachel, she felt like the inferior one. So what does she say? Ki senua anochi. Ki shama Hashem, ki senua anochi. For Hashem has heard that I've been hated. What's the idea? Shimon, the word shama Hashem, ki senua anochi, for I am hated. But the idea of being hated is a good thing, Rabeinu says. Why? Because he brings the Gemara. He brings the Gemara in Baba Metzia, Daf Kuf Zayin Amud Bet, page 107b. Look what he says. He says over there that when you try to rebuke someone, what's the first thing that a person is going to come tell you? First, fix yourself. You're going to come try to tell someone to fix something. Huh? Si vous voulez. Pour la vidéo, non? Peut-être c'est mieux pour la vidéo aussi. Alors bien, si vous ne comprenez pas quelque chose, demande-moi, comme ça on peut traduire. Mais Simcha, c'est très casual, demande-moi des questions, il n'y a pas de problème. So Rabeinu says like this. When you want to rebuke someone, what's the first thing that a person will come tell you naturally? Why are you telling me to fix something? First fix yourself, right? It's a natural response. So what's the idea of being hated? Rabeinu explains like this. He brings the Gemara. Shimon is no longer here. Shimon is the idea of being hated, because that's why Leah named Shimon Shimon. For Hashem has heard that I've been hated. Shimon is the idea of hatred, right? But hatred is not with you guys. Why is hatred not with you guys? Because everybody loves you. And what does it say in the Gemara about love when everybody loves you? Look what the Gemara says in Gemara Ketubot. Hatzuva merabanan, those chachamim, those talmidei chachamim. Dimracham ale b'nei mata, that the city loves these talmidei chachamim. La mishum demalik fere is not because they are at this madrega. You know what we're talking about here, Joe. Right here. It's not because of their excellence or because they're such big people. Because they do not rebuke people in matters of Shamayim. Meaning what? The reason why the city loves some Talmidei Chachamim is because they do not put themselves out there to help other people, to rebuke other people. And because they don't rebuke other people, everybody loves them. Because they're not going to put themselves in that position to be made look like the devil, like the bad guy. But sometimes you have to put yourself in that position to help someone else. Which means you don't care about your image, you don't care about your pride. Shimon isn't here. Why is Shimon not here? Because you don't rebuke people, because if you rebuke people, they will tell you, rebuke yourself first. And obviously you haven't rebuked yourself first, which means you haven't repaired anything. And because you don't rebuke people, everybody loves you. And for that reason, Shimon is no longer here, meaning what? You are not hated. And because you're not hated, you're missing something, because you have gava. Because you're not willing to rebuke people, because you're not willing to take that objection from them, saying what? First fix yourself. Because you guys haven't fixed yourself first. So they don't have the inyan of rebuke, which is the idea that they are hated. So they don't have Shimon, they don't have Yosef. They haven't fixed. And not only that have they not fixed, they're afraid to put their reputation on the line. Third thing. Il y a quelqu'un qui veut lire?
Yes, Moshe, what's the difference between rebuke someone and giving advice? Because you can, you would like to tell someone, give him an advice without being trying to.
Yeah. So Rabeinu says like this: today we are not capable of rebuking. So what is Rabeinu saying here? Obviously, when we talk,
it's like giving your
des remontrances, ouais. What's the idea of rebuke? We cannot rebuke anymore. Rabeinu teaches us.
Même si on voit des choses qui sont, on sait que c'est interdit, genre.
Ouais.
Par exemple, j'ai un exemple concret. Je vois quelqu'un qui fait la tefila pieds nus. Je te jure, j'ai un exemple concret, je l'ai vu de mes propres yeux. Je dois le dire ou je dois pas le dire?
Yeah, he sees someone with bare feet while he's praying.
Yeah.
Can he tell him to put on shoes? So, how do you do it? Binyan Chadarim. Now let me explain. Rabeinu says in lesson 8 of Likutei Moharan, he says like this. Today, nobody's capable to give rebuke. Why? We learn this from the Gemara Arachin. It says over there, Rabbi Akiva came out and said, Tameha ani im yesh echad shebador shera'ui le'ochiach. I am doubtful if there's someone in the generation who has the ability to rebuke. Rabbi Akiva, il a dit ça. All the more, alors Rabeinu dit, Kol sheken, all the more so, us, we are not fitting to give rebuke. Who's the only one fitting to give rebuke? The tzaddik ha'emet, who knows how the kol is mashket again, the entire sequence. Rabeinu explained over there in the second book, in lesson. Rabeinu says like this though. Rabbi Natan brings in Likutei Zohar the key to understand how to fulfill the mitzvah of rebuke today. When you are speaking with your friends, be'erat shamayim, because you guys love each other, you guys are trying to fix each other, you fix each other in the inyan of reinforcing. Hitchaskut. To reinforce each other. But never to mention a person's sins. Because what's tochacha? Tochacha means to rebuke. But what's rebuke? How is rebuke done? Mentioning the sins. What's the proof? Moshe Rabeinu. Sefer Dvarim. The entire Sefer Dvarim is Moshe Rabeinu's tochacha to Am Yisrael. Why? Because Sefer Dvarim is going to be a review of all the things Bnei Israel did. Moshe is going to rebuke them and tell them the things they did wrong. But how does Moshe do it? With his chokhmah, his infinite chokhmah. He reminds them of the places they sinned. He didn't mention the averot they did. He only tells them which places they committed the averot, which reminded them, that place we did this wrong. Moshe never explicitly told them what they did wrong. Meaning, Moshe's chokhmah was so big, even the rebuke on his deathbed, which is Sefer Dvarim, was done in that way. So how do you do it?
Yeah, but they know that they did something wrong.
You're right.
If the guy doesn't know.
Really know. So how do you do it? Whenever you speak to him, if you're not in a position that you're chaverim, you cannot speak to him at all.
Okay.
Because you can, first off, he'll tell you, first fix yourself. Second, by the fact that you're rebuking him, if there's no shalom between you two, there will be no ability to rectify him. In fact, you're only going to bring out a worse odor from his neshama. Rabeinu says, sometimes you think you're helping someone by rebuking them, you're actually bringing out a bad smell from their nefesh. Why? Because you're recognizing their sin before Hashem. They could have been doing a sin for maybe 3 years. By the fact that you mentioned the sin again, now Hashem remembers that sin, because for Hashem Yitbarach, it wasn't that big of a deal. He'd been doing it for that long. But now because you mentioned it, and you mentioned how bad it was, Hashem's going to remind itself. How does Rabeinu say to do it? Be as chaverim and reinforce each other. So maybe a way to do it is when you're with your friend, in a conversation, aside from it, later that day you guys are talking, and you try to incorporate some Torah, you guys are eating a meal, you guys go to Jeff's, you have a lunch. I'm giving a stupid example.
For instance.
Yeah, for instance. You guys are sharing a burger at Jeff's, whatever. And while you're talking about it, you guys speak about tefillah, the power of tefillah. And you mention that somehow in passing.
Okay.
Or viens étudier les halachot du tefillah.
C'est bien ça, ouais.
And when you study, you land on a page.
Je m'embarrasse pas, quoi, comme ça.
Nah, never. Because when you embarrass the person, you bring out something even worse than the rebuke. You're trying to fix him, you actually do worse. Everything has to be done with such ahava, which is why Rabeinu speaks so much about ahavat chaverim.
Can you say?
Ahavat chinam aussi, right? Huh?
Can you say, like, for example, for like the tefillah without shoes, saying like, I remember like I did one day like a tefillah without shoes, and someone told me that I wasn't supposed to do it, like just to say like I
was in the same position.
Like just like not an advice, but just like
yeah, you can.
Fait profiter, genre,
yeah. Of course.
J'ai fait l'erreur moi aussi.
There's a way to do it. Every person, the truth is, you need to have such chokhmah with the situation, because every situation is different, every person is different, and every circumstance and sin is different. That might be not the best thing to do, but there's worse averot, obviously. Maybe sometimes a worse averot you cannot really say, because it becomes more sensitive and it touches someone. Something like that, where a person wants to learn or maybe wants to grow, when you know he's open, you can express him things in a certain way, and obviously in a very light fashion.
Yeah,
but you know what I mean?
Like, it's better, I think.
Yeah, a person does something else, chas v'shalom. Like, you know, a lot of times, I also have this question, maybe you get to know me with this. A lot of times I see people praying next to me that I know in their Amidah that you can hear them. Obviously, you can't pray like that, you know, because you cannot hear someone. The Zohar Kadosh goes how many lengths to explain a person who prays out loud in his tefillah, his Amidah, and it can be heard. The wings of the angels flap away their tefillot. It's not a proper thing to do. There's many things to the point where there's an argument between the Shulchan Aruch and the Zohar Kadosh, how to do the Amidah. The Ben Ish Chai brings this down. And he explains, either you pray like Chana, who moved her lips but nothing came out, meaning not even air came out, meaning you're pronouncing Hashem Sfatat Yiftach, but you're not actually, nothing's coming out. That's one. Meaning you don't even have a voice. That's the way the Zohar says to pray. And Shulchan Aruch says to actually have a voice, but nobody can hear you. Not even your neighbor. Only you yourself. You know, where it's low enough where you can hear yourself and you know your words are coming out of your mouth, but nobody else can hear you. The Ben Ish Chai brings an answer over there. But sometimes you see people, and Ben Ish Chai says, either way is fine. There was a story with his father who prayed, who had a dream, he wanted to fulfill the Zohar, but he had more kavanah when he actually said the words, and he was told to pray the way he was praying. Okay? The entire story. Sometimes you see people praying next to you that pray too loud. How do you do it? I don't know. You have to maybe, when you're speaking about tefillah, for example, you guys are talking about the power of prayer, you mention the halacha without saying anything, meaning without pointing that it's him who does it, you know? That you mention it like this, and like I was just studying recently this. You know what I mean? To bring out the shalom. There's no kintur, there's no kinah, jealousy. That's the ikar. When there's shalom between Israel, I think when there's shalom between Israel, Hashem is even mochel, the generation who serves Avodah Zarah like Enosh.
What does it mean, mochel?
He forgives a generation. When there's shalom between the Jewish people, there's nothing bigger than this. Hashem is willing to forgive even the sin of Avodah Zarah. Meaning, more important sometimes than rebuke, get the shalom. That's the ikar. First, fix the shalom between you and your friend. When the shalom is fixed, then whenever you're going to speak with each other, it's no longer rebuke. What is it? Hitchaskut, reinforcement. Because if I'm going to speak to you about tefillah and you're going to speak to me about tefillah, I'm going to want to hear what you have to say now because I want to grow. But the starting thing is Yirat Shamayim. Because it says, one who does not have Yirat Shamayim will not be able to accept rebuke. It says in the Gemara. So if your friend has no Yirat Shamayim, has no interest, do not say anything. Because it's only going to make it worse. You have to know that he has interest in the first place. So these are different inyanim. But Yaakov Avinu knew this with his sons. Obviously that they were tzaddikim. They just weren't at the madriga of Yosef tzaddik. Or Yaakov who had the aspect of tefillah. So he recognized this within his sons and he's telling them all this rebuke. But
ואת בנימין תיקראו זה מורה על גדלות כי פירש רש"י בנימין על שם ארץ ישראל בנימין וארץ ישראל הוא גבוה מכל הארצות והיינו לא די שאין לכם כל הברינות הללו. עם כל זה ואת בנימין תיקראו שאתם לוקחים מעצמכם גדלות והיינו דסיים השכל המוכיח אותם עליי היו חולנה כי הכל נופל עליי כי כל המתגאה ארמתו מסתלקת ממנו.
So Rabeinu says like this, they took Binyamin too. Because Binyamin was taken back at this point. And Yehuda had an entire problem, this, that. Ze more al gadlut. This is teaching us about gadlut.
C'est quoi gadlut?
Gadlut, pride, orgueil. Why? Because Rashi explains, Binyamin, Hashem Eretz Yisrael, Benyamin. Binyamin's name was named because of Benyamin. He was the son of the Yamin.
Left?
The right.
Right.
They say Yamin is also the Yamin as south. the south. Meaning, we're talking the son of the south. What is the son of the south? Eretz Israel. Eretz Israel, because when you come from Aram Naharaim, you go down, that's the Eretz Israel is south of that. So Eretz Israel is Binyamin. Binyamin was named Benjamin because of Eretz Israel. And Eretz Israel is above all the lands in Tzedek Marazvachim. So if Eretz Israel is above all the lands and Binyamin is named after Eretz Israel, Binyamin is the Bechina of being above everything.
Why Benjamin is Israel?
Because he's called Benjamin.
Yeah.
That's why Yaacov named him Benjamin.
Yeah. And what?
Meaning, the son of Eretz Israel.
Why Yamin is Israel?
Yamin, ça veut dire le sud. And what's the sud referencing? Obviously, when Yaakov was saying it, it's south of Aram Naharaim. All the Iraqi countries. Hein?
Not Drum? Drum.
Darom, ouais. Mais aussi, ils disent Yamina, c'est aussi Darom. Ça veut dire même nom. Benjamin. Hare Shisham Benjamin remez Eretz Israel. So you see Benjamin, exactly what you're saying. Benjamin is hinting to Eretz Israel, and Eretz Israel is above all the lands. So you see, Benjamin is the aspect of being above. Okay? So what did Yaakov say? What did he say? Not only do you not have all the other aspects of Yosef and Shimon, but you also do not have Binyamin. They've taken Binyamin. Meaning you have taken Binyamin. What's Binyamin? You've taken pride for yourself. Not only have you not fixed your gava, and not only have you not gotten to the point where you rebuke other people, but on top of that, you've taken Binyamin for yourself, meaning that you've taken for yourselves pride. On top of the fact that you didn't fix anything, you've taken for yourself pride, meaning, what's Yaakov saying? Yaakov is saying, you did not fix anything, and on top of that, you've taken kavod. So what did he say? How did he finish off? Upon me, everything is happening. Because everything falls upon the chokhmah, the sechel. Because when a person falls into gava, his chokhmah is removed from him. So, Rabeinu was saying that the ikar is what falls on the chokhmah, which is Yaakov. Yaakov is taking all the punishment. Why? Because the sechel, whenever a person falls into gava, the sechel takes in all the punishment. That's what ends up happening. And it removes a person's sechel. Let's see now. Yeah, they didn't have any of the other aspects. Anyone have any questions before we go to the next subject? Oh, we're good. Let's see this. Okay. Next one. Now. Il y a quelqu'un qui veut lire?
Vas-y Sam ou Nathan?
Ouais.
Je pense à
והעצה.
והעצה הייעוצה לבעל הגאווה שהיא עבודה זרה, כמו שכתוב תועבת השם כל גבלב, העיקר הוא על ידי התקרבות לצדיקים כמובא בתיקונים בתחוה דרוחה יתעביר אל אחר וצדיק הוא בחינת רוחה כמו שכתוב איש אשר רוח בו ועל ידו נכנע רוח גבוה אל אחר ונעשה מאחר אחד כי הוא קוצה דעות דלת שממנו ארבע רוחות כמו שכתוב כה אמר השם ארבע רוחות בואי הרוח וזה לשון תרועה לשון תרועם בשבט ברזל כי משבר רוח גבוה אל אחר תפירות
חזק. טוב, אוקיי. חזק וברוך. והעצה יוצא לבעל גאווה. Now Rabeinu will ramener the remedy. He's going to bring the remedy, the fixing for a person who falls into gava.
When you say Rabeinu, is it Rabbi Natan or
Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman.
En fait, c'est Rabbi Nathan qui a écrit les enseignements
Tout
de
le
Rabbi
ouais.
Nathan. Là, c'est
Ah, ok.
Rabbi Nathan qui a écrit, mais il rapporte les paroles de Rabbi
Rabbi
Nathan.
Natan. Ok.
Ouais.
En fait, Rabbi Nathan n'a rien écrit de lui-même, c'est ça?
Il a écrit des petits des Torahs. Il y a plein de Torahs qui.
Rabbi Natan, il a rien écrit.
Non, moi je me demande. Non,
Non, Rabbi Nathan,
Rabbi
il a
Nachman.
tout écrit.
Rabbi Nathan, il a tout écrit pour lui. Rabbi Nathan, c'est l'élève.
C'est l'élève de Rabbi
C'est
Nachman.
l'élève.
Ok.
C'est lui l'élève de Rabbi Nachman. Grâce à lui, on a tout. Thanks to him, we have everything. Regarde Rabbi Nathan, Rabbi Nachman, il a dit Lo ala daf echad misfarai. Il n'y aura pas une page de mes livres s'il n'y avait pas Rabbi Nathan. Alors, grâce à Rabbi Nathan, on a tout. Baruch Hashem. Maintenant, qu'est-ce qu'il dit Rabbi Nachman? What does Rabbi Nachman say? Now we're going to bring the etzah for the person who falls into gava, because we just talked about the entire story, how the gava is what prevents people from attaching themselves to the tzaddikim, which is the tikkun for bringing the goyim close to Hashem Bach, as we discussed, and bring the gedula of Hashem Bach, which is the dancing and the clapping and all these things. Meaning the bal gava is preventing this entire tikkun from happening. So how do you prevent yourself from falling into gava? Now Rabeinu is going to bring a chidush that I don't think any tzaddik ever before had the koach to bring down a chidush like this. Pourquoi? Because nobody dares to speak about gava. What's the proof? When it's crazy. The inyan of gava is very unique. Rabbi Natan in the introduction to Likutei Zohar brings the story of the Baal Shem Tov. And the story of the Baal Shem Tov goes like this. The Baal Shem Tov was once praying with his chavraya, with his students, in a Bet Midrash, and they were praying with so much koach and kavanah that they were bringing a huge light. And because they saw the huge light that was coming down, they fell into gava. And as they were falling into gava, because they had so much kavanah, the Baal Shem Tov prayed extra long. And when they finished the tefillah, the Baal Shem Tov rebuked them and he said, because of you guys, of your kavanah, you guys fell into gava. And because of the gava, I had to spend time in my tefillah now to subdue your gava and to mitigate a judgment that was falling upon you, that Hashem brought down on you because of your gava. Rabbi Natan speaks about this with the inyan of gava. Gava is something almost impossible to defeat. But the Baal Shem Tov once had his students come to him, and the students wanted to go visit a very big tzaddik at that time. And the Baal Shem Tov looked at the students and said, look, you guys can go visit the tzaddik, but know one thing. If you want to know if the tzaddik is true or not true, ask him one question. How do you save yourself from pride, from gava? So, the Baal Shem Tov continues and he says like this. If the tzaddik responds, oi, what are we going to do from pride? You know he's a true tzaddik. If the tzaddik responds to your question, which is how to save yourself from pride, by saying, oi, how do I save myself from pride? What do I do? Meaning the tzaddik, il n'a pas une réponse.
Ouais, il répond par une question, quoi.
Exactement. Il est vrai. He's a real tzaddik.
Parce que sinon, ça voudrait dire que s'il pense avoir le remède à la solution, c'est que lui-même
il a la gava, exactement.
Ouais.
Alors, le Baal Shem Tov, il dit, but if he responds, that means he has gava because he thinks he has the remedy for gava. Who can say that? The Baal Shem Tov, he didn't have a remedy for gava. Rabeinu, il va ramener the remedy, right? The refoua. Look what he says. The only person who can bring this is a person who's tzaddik amur, who has no gava left. Because you have to be at the madrega to have no gava, to give a remedy for gava. Because we're talking about the hardest ta'ava. It's the last ta'ava that exists within a person. The last. Rabeinu explains in lesson 52 of Likutei Moharan. Says like this: when you have chas v'shalom, all these ta'avot, right? Food, money, woman, tout ça, okay? You break one from the next. It takes years to break each one. You're gonna break everything. For anger, for everything, every ta'ava. When you break everything and you have nothing left, what's the one ta'ava that you still have left?
Gava.
The gava, why? Because you have the gava that you have nothing. It's what we call the klum. When you have nothing left, no ta'avot left, the klum, the nothingness, is gava. Parce que tu vas te dire, je suis un sadique, moi. J'ai rien. J'ai pas de ta'avot. J'ai brisé tout. I've broken everything. Alors, Rabbi Nachman says, the klum you have to break too. Until you pray and you pray and you pray till you get to the point where you have nothing, even the klum. Meaning even the nothingness is removed from you. You don't even recognize your nothing. C'est comme Moshe Rabeinu. It says, Moshe lo yadad kurato. Rabeinu teaches us in lesson 4. Moshe Rabeinu lui-même, il ne savait pas où il était enterré. Moshe Rabeinu didn't even know where he was buried. Why? Because he didn't even know his level. Bitul gashmiut, complètement. He completely destroyed his gashmiut. Moshe Rabeinu. Il n'avait pas de gava. Même le gava qu'il avait, il avait complètement effacé. Il n'y avait rien. So, that's the same thing we're talking about here. The etzah yotza levar gava, the advice of all advice for a person who has gava, Shehi avodah zarah. And Rabeinu explains gava is avodah zarah. It is avodah zarah. It is idol worship. Gava, as it says in Mishlei, Toavat Hashem kol galel, the abomination of Hashem. Hashem is disgusted by all those who have gava, a gvalev, a haughty heart. Right? So avodah zarah is toavat Hashem, which you cannot bring a toeva to the house of Hashem. This is gava. This toava is avodah zarah. This abomination is avodah zarah for Hashem. It's the opposite of Hashem. As we say in the Gemara Sota also, one who has gava, ani vehu lo yachol lador biyachad. Hashem says, I and him are not able to dwell together. One who has gava, me and him cannot live in the same world. We cannot live in the same world. We are a totally separate world. So meaning what? Gava gets rid of Hashem Yitbarach. And because Gava gets rid of Hashem, it's avodah zarah. So, Rabbi Nachman explains, to get rid of Gava, ha'ikar, hu al yedei hitkarvut latzadikim. When you draw close to the tzadikim, when you ask them to pray on your behalf. So look at it in the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Kol adam sheish bo gasut aror kilu oved avodat kochavim. Anyone who has gava is as if he served idols. So avat Hashem kol gvalev, as we brought down. So what does Rabeinu say? Reading a beautiful paragraph here. Anyways, so what does Rabeinu say? And what's the proof? Why is drawing close to the tzaddikim? We'll finish off this section today. So we'll go up and we'll explain this and then we'll stop. What's the inyan of drawing close to the tzaddikim? Why is that bitul gava? Why is that get rid of gava? Because it's brought down in Tikkunei Zohar. Look at this sod. Look at it. It's an amazing sod. Rabeinu brings. Tikkun Chafalev. Tikkun 21 of Tikkunei Zohar, the deepest writings of the Zohar Kadosh. Bitrua de iurucha, with the teruah, which is the shofar blow, the long shofar. No, tekiah, teruah, tekiah. So the teruah is the small blows, the small long blows. Bitrua, exactement. With the teruah, the iurucha, which the Zohar Kadosh says, teruah is ruach. C'est l'esprit. La teruah, c'est l'esprit. C'est quoi ça? It avir el acher. With the ruach, you get rid of el acher. Avodah zarah.
So you can remove your gava?
Gava. Because what we're saying is avodah zarah, gava, right? But what's the ruach? With the teruah, which is the ruach, you get rid of gava. El acher, believing in other gods. You are fulfilling the mitzvah of lo yelecha Elohim acherim when you blow the teruah. But why is it blowing the teruah? Rabeinu is going to explain what the sod of the teruah is. Teruah is not just blowing the teruah. C'est quoi? T'attacher au tzaddik. Pourquoi? Because the teruah is in Tikkunei Zohar, the iurucha. Teruah is ruach. So if teruah is ruach, what's ruach? Le tzaddik ou b'chinat ruach. Le tzaddik, il est le ruach. Pourquoi? Why is the tzaddik the ruach? Comme je dis, ish asher ruach bo.
Tu dis que c'est pas toi qui est assez important pour prier, mais tu t'en remets au tzaddik et c'est le tzaddik qui prie pour toi.
Mais c'est quoi le ruach? Ça veut dire quoi le ruach? Ish asher ruach bo. C'est ça le tikkun. The tzaddik is the ruach. Why? Because he has the ruach within him. What does it say about Yosef HaTzadik? Yosef HaTzadik, Paro comes before Yosef, and he says, listen to Yosef. Why? Because Ish Asher Ruach Bo. Il a l'esprit dans lui, il a le Ruach dans lui. Ruach Elokim. This is what it says over there. In, what is it? But the real pasuk, what we're talking about here also, it comes from a different place, not even from Yosef. Because we say about Yosef that he had the Ruach Elokim. But look what it says about this. When Moshe was requesting a manhig, a leader for the Jewish people, that would be after him, what did Hashem tell him? Kach lechat Yehoshua ben Nun, take for yourself Yehoshua ben Nun, ish asher ruach bo. He has the ruach within him. This samachta yadecha alav, and you will put your hands on him. Meaning what? The tzaddik who's going to lead the Jewish people, which is Yehoshua after Moshe Rabeinu, he has ruach. Why? Because pourquoi il a le roi? Because you're going to push your hands on him. On dit avant qu'on va dormir, Be'adecha afkid ruchi. With be'adecha in your hands, afkid ruchi, I deposit your ruach. The hands are where the ruach is. So what does the tzaddik do? He puts the ruach and he's somech on the talmid. What's the chidush here? Le tzaddik ha'emet, il donne le ruach à le talmid. Même Rabbi Nathan, il a le ruach. Rabbi Nathan has the ruach himself. Why? Because Rabeinu somech on him. Rabeinu gave smicha to Rabbi Nathan. Pourquoi it's called smicha? Why is it called smicha? Smicha, ça veut dire de pousser. To push. Pourquoi smicha? Comme on fait sur les animaux pour les korbanot. When we go the korbanot, we do the korbanot. We put all our averot on the head of the animal. Then we do the korban. Pourquoi il y a smicha? Why is there smicha? Smicha, ça veut dire pousser. We're going to put the ruach into the animal. Why ruach? Because what made the person do the avera? Ruach shtut. The spirit of foolishness. So you're going to push your ruach onto the animal. Maintenant, you're going to get rid of your avera. You're going to put it in the animal and you're going to do kapara. You're going to do the zvicha. You're going to do the slaughtering. But for the tzaddik, when he wants to put the ruach into the talmid, so now the talmid is tzaddik. Like Rabeinu explains in lesson 66. Why Elisha merited a double portion. Kol ma da'avid Elisha bitfila da'avid. Everything that Elisha accomplished, which was more than Eliyahu Navi, more than the Rav, Elisha accomplished. Le Talmid, il a fait plus que le Rav. Yoshua, il a fait la même chose. Il a rentré en Eretz Israël. Moshe Rabbeinu ne pouvait pas. Mais pourquoi? Why is that? Why did Yoshua enter the land of Israel? Why was it that he accomplished more than Moshe? Why was it Elisha accomplished more than Eliyahu? Because Eliyahu and Moshe were somech on Elisha and Yoshua. Because they gave the ruach. And when they gave the ruach, now they have the upper ruach and the lower ruach. They have a double ruach. They have more koach. But it thinks to the tzaddik, don't think for 1 second you're bigger than the tzaddik. They did more, but they're not bigger than the tzaddik. Because the tzaddik he's inspired the ruach in you. So what's Rabeinu saying? When you attach yourself to the tzaddik, he's the ruach, but he's going to give you the same gift like we talked about in the 7 beggars. When you're the talmid of the... What is talmid chacham? We talked about earlier at the beginning. Like Rabbi Israel said. Rabbi Israel used to say like this. We're talking about Gil and Yosef. Mi ze talmid chacham? Talmid shel chacham ha'emet. The talmid of the true chacham. Quelqu'un qui est attaché au vrai tzaddik. That's a talmid chacham. I mean, Rabbi Israel disait comme ça. Rabbi Israel used to say like this. One who's a talmid chacham who thinks he knows Gemara Poskim, shas by heart, but he's not attached to the tzaddik, he's like an amaret. Because he's not a talmid shel chacham ha'emet. He's not a talmid of the true chacham. What is talmid chacham? The son of the student of wisdom, to be the student of the man who has the wisdom, the chacham. Who's the chacham? Moshe Rabeinu. Alors si toi tu penses que tu es plus haut que le tzaddik, t'es pas un vrai chacham. If you think you're bigger than the true tzaddik, you're not a real chacham. So what is Rabeinu saying here? Ish asher ruach bo. He has the spirit within him. Yoshua has the spirit. He had the ruach. And why is that? Al yadon yichna ruach gavoa el acher. Through the spirit of the tzaddik, you're going to get rid of the bad spirit, which is what? The spirit of gavoa. The spirit of gava. Which is what? As we talked about earlier, Avodah Zarah is Ruach Gavoa. It's the upper spirit, which is El Acher, the other gods, Chad v'shalom. And now when you attach yourself to the tzaddik, what are you going to do? You're going to repair Avodah Zarah. Why? Because you're going to attach a point at the end of the resh, which is going to make the resh into a dalet. This is the sod. Look how beautiful the sod is. What's the difference between the word Acher, which means other, ça veut dire Avodah Zarah, El Acher, and Echad, which is Shema Yisrael Hashem Echad, ça veut dire l'unité du Dieu. To have the unity of Hashem versus the opposite, which is El Echad, the other God. What's the difference between the word? 1 point. Which point is it? The point on the letter Resh. Because if you look at the letter Resh, the Resh is curved like this, 1 bar. Curved. The Dalet though is a horizontal bar and a vertical bar. But there's a piece of the vertical bar that passes over the horizontal bar, that passes over the vertical. So it's like this and like this. That's the Dalet. But this piece right here, ça dépasse. That piece is the tzaddik. C'est marqué dans le Zohar Kadosh. It's written in the Zohar. Tzaddik Kotza de od Dalet. The tzaddik is the point of the letter Dalet. Which point? The point that tzaddik passes, which passes over the vertical bar. That's what adds to the acher, which turns into echad. Ça veut dire, when you include the kotza de od Dalet, ça veut dire le tzaddik, dans le mot acher, ça devient quoi? Echad.
Ah ouais, parce que tu prends le point de Dalet.
Le point de Dalet. Et pourquoi le point de Dalet?
Parce que
Mais et quoi? Pourquoi le Dalet? Mais arba kanfot bo yaruach. From the four corners comes the ruach. C'est quoi Dalet? Les quatre. Les quatre quoi?
4 directions.
4 directions, exactement. Alors, mais arba kanfot, from the four directions, bo yaruach comes the spirit. Which spirit? The ruach, tzaddik. Le tzaddik, il donne le ruach à chaque direction. Alors, maintenant, when the tzaddik is going to give the ruach to every single direction, what is he? He's the point of the letter Dalet. Because from that point, all the other four corners are now going to have the ruach. Thanks to the tzaddik. Me arba ruchot bo yaruach. From the four ruchot, from the four spirits, comes O spirit. Which spirit? The spirit of the tzaddik. So now the tzaddik, he gives life to the letter Dalet. And now that point in the letter Dalet is giving life to the acher and turning it into echad. Because when you put the point in the resh, it becomes a Dalet. Now what do? You turn ruach gavoa. You turn el acher, you turn avodah zarah into what? Shema Yisrael, Shema Elokeinu Echad. You turn it into emunah b'yichud shel Hashem. שממנו ארבע רוחות, כמו שכתוב, כה אמר השם, מארבע רוחות בורא רוח. As from the tzaddik comes the four ruchot, from the four spirits. As it says in Yechezkel, like Hashem says, מארבע רוחות בורא רוח. From the four spirits, the ruach came. What is the מארבע רוחות? That there's going to be one spirit that comes from all these four spirits, and that spirit, that one spirit which comes from the other four, is the kotz of the Dalet, which is the tzaddik emet. And this is the language teruah. Why teruah? Because we said earlier, teruah is the shon of teruah de iurucha itavir alacha. Teruah is ruach. Why is teruah ruach? Leshon teroem b'shevet barzel. Teruah comes from the word teroem, kaseh. Break it with an iron rod. Teruah is literally explaining what? Shvira, to break something. Why? Because the teruah breaks the gava. El acher, which is kfirot, which is atheism. Now Rabeinu is explaining through the ruach of the kedusha of the tzaddik ha'emet, you're able to break atheism, which is what? El acher. Ça veut dire, il y a les gens qui pensent quand tu t'attaches au tzaddik, que c'est l'avodah zarah de shalom. Rabeinu il dit complètement opposite direction. It's the exact opposite. When you attach to the tzaddik, you get rid of avodah zarah. Pourquoi? Parce que what's the biggest avodah zarah that exists today? Gava.
Comme tu t'attaches, t'enlèves ta gava.
Exactement, parce que tu connais que t'es rien.
Donc c'est pas du tout avodah zarah, bien sûr.
Exactement. So when now you know you're nothing, now you take the ruach of the tzaddik. You become part of the tzaddik. And this is where I'll finish off. Like Rabeinu says in Moharan, אני רוצה שתהיו כמוני ממש. שאתם תהיו כמוני ממש. I want you guys to be exactly like me. Why? Ça veut dire le tzaddik, he wants you to attain the madriga of the tzaddik. How do you do that though? When you become nothing. Ça veut dire, efface-toi. Make yourself nothing. Parce que le tzaddik, il n'a pas de gava. He has no advantage for you to come and to do this for his gava chad shalom. He only attained his level because he has nothing left. But when you yourself recognize how far you are from the 7 beggars, from the true tzaddik, what does he do? He gives you the gift. He gives you the ruach. He gives you the gifts which he has. Ça veut dire, Rabeinu, il peut te donner tout, only if you crois en lui, only if you believe in him. Je veux appliquer les conseils. I want to apply the advice. I want to be a simple Jew. When Rabeinu says to do hitbod dedut, je vais faire hitbod dedut. Même si je connais rien, même si je ne peux pas parler, je vais faire hitbod dedut. Why? Parce que je suis ma'amin, j'ai la émouna, j'ai la foi. Quand Rabeinu il dit ça, ça peut m'aider. Ça c'est le ikar. Alors, quand on sait ça, maintenant, when we know this is the ikar of getting rid of the avodah zarah. Which is now, Bezrat Hashem, next section, we'll talk about how this is all about dancing. We're going back to the beginning. Alors, Baruch Hashem, we covered some ground. Chazak. Top comme ça.